What you're seeing in the Western world is the math catching up with everybody. Okay, I want to be kind of clear on this. And I can't be in my garage because my garage has a generator going. It's noisy, and my whole house is in like total chaos because of the storm and what have you. A hurricane hit us and all that kind of shit. So you get this background. Anyway, what you're seeing is math catch up. If you understand how a Ponzi scheme works, and I know some of you do, for those of you who don't, let me just break it down briefly. A Ponzi scheme works like this. You offer somebody, hey, give me $100, and in 90 days I'm going to give you $150. And then, for example, okay, and they're like, that's a great investment. My God, 50% for 90 days, that's a lot. So they do that, and if you get a bunch of people to do that, right, and then you give the first people in their return and stuff, and they keep reinvesting and reinvesting and reinvesting. The theory is if you just keep it going long enough, that somehow it'll all work out. Now it won't. Ponzi schemes work only if you're adding people. What happens when you stop adding people? Now let's apply that to the broader economy. In the Western world, and about 93 countries that are in demographic decline right now. Let's apply that, okay? Ponzi schemes work if you're adding people. What are people not doing right now? They're not adding people, right? They're just not. So when you have, and I did a whole series on this where I tried to explain how this worked. The baby boomers are so named because it was a boom. It was an exception to the rule, compounded by people living longer and having easier lives, right? They're not having to expend all of their energy trying to survive. You follow? So, but they didn't have 7 kids each, right? My dad is one of 5. My mom is one of 8, I think, if I remember right. 7. My wife's mom is one of 9. And my wife's dad is one of 6, okay? How many of them had 7, 8, 9 kids each? I'm one of 1. My wife is one of 1. You follow? So that means you're not adding enough people to the back end of that to keep this Ponzi scheme going. Okay, this is what happens with something called compounding of interest. This is why there is no way to pay any of this stuff off. This is why your dollar is a debt instrument, by the way, and it's a mathematical certainty that it's going to lose its value because of this. Okay, it's a debt instrument. I don't give a shit what Dave Ramsey says. Every dollar, I know that you may pay cash for everything. That's great, and I think you should do that. I think most people probably should be paying cash for everything. And cash, I don't mean necessarily dollars. Cash just means, in the generic sense, it means having a no-debt transaction. I don't want to get off into the weeds into that. But if you're paying cash for everything, that's fantastic. It doesn't change the fact that the dollar is still a debt-based instrument. So in order to create a dollar, somebody has to be willing to first borrow a dollar, okay? So there's this huge amount of debt, and it can never be paid back. It can never be paid back. There's no way. Because people are not going to have kids fast enough, which are attempting to replace you effectively, because you're not having a bunch of kids, okay? You're not keeping the Ponzi scheme going, right? The Ponzi scheme collapses when you stop adding people. That's how it all works. And when you have your currency based on that. Now, how does it work like that? Because it's a debt-based instrument. And the compounding of interest, you will never get ahead of that, right? You will never get ahead of the compounding of interest. That's what makes the people who have lent out so much money so powerful, okay? The central bankers and what have you. Keep in mind, you eventually run out of everybody else's money. I know Margaret Thatcher said that, but she wasn't wrong, and she applied it to communism. But it doesn't just apply to communism. You understand? This is where a bunch of you guys don't understand this. I think a lot of you get too stuck in this weird left-right politics bullshit. I make fun of it all day long because for me it's fucking hilarious watching this shit. But let's be serious. Jokes aside, there's one thing that communism and capitalism have in common. One thing. What is it? We've already been over this. What's the one thing they have in common? Central banking. It's the one thing both systems have in common. They are both doomed to failure. They are always doomed to failure.